She thought she'd evicted her enemy, but some battles don't end at the front door. They move into your mind and live there forever. The kitchen smelled faintly of caramelized onions and slow-cooked spices, the kind of aroma that normally wrapped Isabella Cortez in a cocoon of comfort. Today, it only served as a thin veil over the icy air pressing in around her. She stood at the counter, knife moving rhythmically through the layers of a white onion, the sharp scent stinging her eyes but not enough to make her cry. Crying was for those caught off guard, for people who had not prepared for the blow before it came. She had been prepared for months. "I need your room. You'll have to move out." The voice floated toward her from the doorway, smooth and confident if it had been rehearsed. Isabella looked up slowly, her gaze locking with the woman standing there. Sofia Valles, her father's fiancée, her hand resting on the swell of a pregnant belly as though the curve itself was a shield and a crown. The glint in Sofia's eyes carried smugness like a second skin. Isabella said nothing. She simply held her stare, the knife never missing a beat against the cutting board. The tension was thick enough to hear in the silence. Sofia seemed almost disappointed at the lack of an emotional explosion. "I thought it would be easier this way," she continued. "Better to tell you now, so you can get a head start." Isabella's mind was already peeling back layers of memory. She remembered the day her father first mentioned Sofia, how he had been hesitant at first, as though unsure how his daughter would react. She had wanted to be happy for him. He had been lonely since her mother passed, spending years lost in work and evenings in front of a muted television. Sofia had arrived like sunlight in a dark room, with warm laughter and perfectly timed compliments. She had insisted Isabella was like the younger sister she never had. Isabella, careful but polite, had told her the truth then, that the house had been left in her name by her mother. Sofia had smiled wider and called her a smart girl. At first, things had been fine. Sofia cooked elaborate dinners, kept her father occupied, and avoided interfering in Isabella's space. But it hadn't lasted. Small shifts began to take root. Sofia started making suggestions, a different arrangement of furniture, new paint colors, maybe replacing the old oak dining table Isabella's mother had picked herself. Then came the remarks about space, about how Isabella's room was far too large for just one person, how the guest room would be better suited for her. When her father announced Sofia's pregnancy, his eyes shone with a joy Isabella hadn't seen in years. She smiled for his sake, but felt a knot tighten deep in her chest. The cracks widened quickly after that. Sofia became bolder, directing conversations, intercepting decisions, steering her father away from Isabella's opinions. Her phone seemed welded to her hand, her tone sharper, her laughter hollow. The breaking point had come quietly, one late afternoon when Isabella passed the living room and heard their voices. Sofia's was low but firm. "She needs to be independent. This house has wasted space for her." "She's my daughter," her father murmured. "She's an adult," Sofia pressed. "We'll need her room for the baby." Isabella had stood frozen, absorbing each word. Something cold settled into her then, an unshakable resolve. They would never see her break. They would never see her fight openly. Instead, she would build her answer piece by piece until it was unmovable. From that day, the plan began. She called her lawyer, the same one who had handled the property transfer from her mother's will. They reviewed the deed. Her name was the only one printed in black ink. The foundation of her home was stronger than Sofia could ever know. Next came security, cameras at every entry, smart locks only she could program, and an upgraded alarm system. Every pathway to her space was under her control. Then she visited her bank, setting up a trust to seal her finances beyond her father's reach. Every thread that connected to the house and her life was knotted tight in her hands. She waited. 2 months later, Sofia chose her moment. She stepped into the kitchen with the calm authority of someone expecting no resistance. "You should start packing," she said, tilting her head in mock sympathy. Isabella's knife kept its rhythm. "Packing? For the nursery," Sofia replied. "You can't expect a baby to sleep in that tiny guest room." Isabella set the knife down, wiped her hands on a towel, and met Sofia's gaze with quiet steel. "You should check public records before making assumptions." For the first time, Sofia's smile faltered. The next morning, Isabella's lawyer delivered the eviction notice, addressed to Sofia by name. 30 days to vacate the property. Her father stormed into her room, his voice rising with disbelief. "What the hell is this?" "It's a legal eviction," Isabella said evenly. "She's not on the deed, and neither are you. This house is mine." His mouth opened and closed, the words catching in his throat. Sophia tried to rally, her voice thick with outrage. "You can't do this. I'm pregnant." "I can," Isabella replied, her tone calm, final. "And I will." The silence that followed was almost satisfying. Days passed with Sophia avoiding her gaze, her father offering half-hearted bargains, but Isabella reminded him of the cameras, the trust, the unshakable fact that the law was on her side. When the moving truck arrived, Sophia did not look at her. Isabella stood in the doorway, watching each box leave, the imagined nursery erased before it existed. After they were gone, the house breathed again. Rooms felt bigger, lighter. Her father still called sometimes, careful with his words, avoiding Sophia's name. The baby was born somewhere else, far from the home Sophia had once tried to claim. But Isabella knew this was only the first act. She had won this round, but there were currents beneath the surface that had yet to rise. And she could feel it. Sophia wasn't finished. Weeks passed before the first sign that the quiet would not last. It came on a Wednesday morning as Isabella was pouring coffee. The doorbell rang once, firm and deliberate. She opened the door to find a cream-colored envelope resting on the welcome mat. No postage, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with typed words that made her stomach tighten. "You might have the house, but I will have the family." There was no signature, but the message carried Sophia's venom as clearly as if she had been standing there whispering it. Isabella slid the paper into a folder, her mind already cataloging the new development. She did not call her father. She did not confront Sophia. Instead, she added another lock to the front gate and had her lawyer keep the note on record. 2 weeks later, her father showed up unannounced. He looked older, his hair unkempt, his shoulders heavy. He asked to come in. Isabella hesitated, then stepped aside. They sat in the living room where sunlight spilled across the floor, illuminating the dust motes drifting between them. He spoke slowly, choosing each word like it might explode if handled carelessly. Sophia was struggling, he said. The baby kept her up at night. She had no family nearby, and he wanted Isabella to meet her niece. Isabella's answer was immediate. No. His eyes flickered with something between anger and sadness. "She is your blood," he said. "She is Sophia's daughter," Isabella corrected. "That is not the same thing." He left without finishing his coffee. The following weekend, Isabella noticed a car parked across the street. Dark-tinted windows, no one getting in or out. It stayed there for hours, then returned the next day. She recorded the license plate and forwarded it to a contact in the police department, an old friend of her mother's. The response came back quickly. The car was registered to a rental company. No rental agreement tied to Sophia's name, but the shadow of her influence was obvious. By the end of the month, Isabella's resolve was tested in a way she had not anticipated. She met Daniel Vega at a community charity event, a man with warm eyes and a quiet confidence that made conversation easy. They talked for hours, their connection unfolding naturally. Over the next few weeks, coffee dates turned into dinners, and dinners into nights spent walking under city lights. For the first time in months, Isabella allowed herself to imagine a life untouched by the bitterness Sophia had brought into her home. But Sophia was never far. The first time Daniel came to the house, Isabella found a small, delicate rattle placed on her doorstep afterward. The kind of gift you give a newborn. No note, no explanation. She knew it was a message, a reminder that Sophia could reach her whenever she wanted. Isabella tightened her security again, but Daniel noticed a shift in her mood. One evening, sitting in the garden with candles flickering between them, he asked what she was afraid of. She told him everything, from the first smug smile Sophia had worn in her kitchen to the eviction, to the envelope and the rattle. Daniel listened without interruption. When she was done, he took her hand and said, "She can't touch what's inside you unless you let her." It was a comforting thought, but Isabella knew better. Sophia didn't need to touch what was inside her to cause damage. She only needed to keep pressing from the outside until something cracked. The breaking point came in late autumn. Isabella returned home from work to find her front door ajar. Her heart pounded as she stepped inside, every muscle tight with expectation. The alarm had not been triggered, which meant whoever entered knew exactly how to bypass it. She moved through the rooms quickly, nothing visibly disturbed, until she reached her bedroom. On her neatly made bed lay a single item, a framed photograph of her mother, one that had been in a locked drawer in her desk. The glass was cracked down the center, the fracture running through her mother's face. Isabella stood there, her pulse roaring in her ears. This was no random intrusion. This was personal, precise, and it was meant to tell her that nothing in the house was beyond reach. She called the police, filed a report, and spent the night at Daniel's place. But she did not feel safe even there. In her mind, she replayed every encounter with Sophia, every moment she had underestimated her persistence. 2 nights later, her father called. His voice was low, strained. Sophia had been in an accident, he said. She was in the hospital. He did not ask her to visit, but the implication was there. Isabella felt a war between her anger and her sense of humanity. She told him she would think about it and hung up. Daniel encouraged her to go, if only to see the situation for herself. Against her instincts, she agreed. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and fatigue. Sophia lay in a bed, pale but very much alive, her eyes still carrying that spark of calculation. When she saw Isabella, she smiled faintly. "You came," she whispered. "I'm not here for you," Isabella replied. "I'm here for my father." Sophia's smile widened just enough to reveal her satisfaction. "You'll never be free of me," she said softly. "Even if you win every battle, I'll still be in the story of your life." Isabella left without answering, but her mind was already spinning. 2 months later, just before the year turned, Isabella received another letter. This one was handwritten in a looping script she recognized instantly. "You think you've closed the door, but I'm already inside." She burned the letter, but the unease remained. She had kept her house, her independence, and her control. Yet Sophia had found a way to make her presence permanent, not by staying in the building, but by carving herself into the spaces between Isabella's peace. Daniel held her close that night, telling her the future was theirs to shape. Isabella wanted to believe him, but in the quiet of her room, with shadows stretching across the walls, she knew the truth. Some enemies never disappear. They only change shape. And as she drifted to sleep, she realized that Sophia had achieved exactly what she wanted, not the house, but the knowledge that even in defeat, she could still haunt her. The war was over. The suspense was not.